Hello and welcome to another episode of Jakub's House of Rock. My name's Jakub and today I've got a very exciting episode for you guys because we are going to be modifying this Epiphone 2020 Special P90 Edition guitar. It's a lovely guitar, by the way. I did a review of this thing and it has been one of my favorite guitars, I gotta say. Even since doing that review I've been using this thing a lot. But we're going to be modifying this nonetheless to become as close as a copy as I can get this thing to being to Tony Iommi's Monkey SG. For those of you who don't know, and I don't know why you wouldn't, but Tony Iommi, he is the guitarist of Black Sabbath, one of my all-time favorite bands, one of my all-time favorite guitarists. And he had a modified Gibson SG Special used as one of his primary guitars on the first 4 Sabbath albums. It is the guitar that is known to being the guitar that the genre of heavy metal was basically created with. So it is one of, if not the most iconic and greatest guitars of the heavy metal genre. This guitar here gets us already really close to that original guitar. It's not a Gibson, which is a bummer, but, you know, I'm not made of money. And the components we're going to be using today weren't cheap to begin with, so to actually get a Gibson SG Special, I don't have that kind of money. Nonetheless, we're going to be turning this one into a copy of that Monkey SG. So before we get anywhere further, why is it called the Monkey SG, you might be wondering? Well, most of you guys who are watching this probably already know, but Tony's guitar, it actually had a little sticker decal on it around this area. Well, his was a left-handed guitar, so it would have been around this area or something like that. But you get the drift. Of a monkey playing a violin. So it's a classic little thing that he had on his guitar. You can actually get stickers of that specific design for doing projects like this. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm just going to keep this guitar stock without the sticker on it. But we are going to be quite heavily modifying a bunch of other parts of this guitar. So what makes Tony's guitar different from all other SG Specials? The main thing is the pickups, and my last video, if you saw, I actually did an unboxing of these specific pickups, so I'll just quickly bring them in. I will go into more depth about them in a second, but here they are. These are recreations of those pickups that Tony had installed in his guitar. So his guitar was actually heavily modified by a luthier known as John Birch. These pickups here are actually made by John Diggins, who was an apprentice of John Birch and actually subsequently made a lot of other guitars for Tony Iommi and has been his main guitar tech and luthier since then. But originally the pickups were made by John Birch. And these are the JayDee Monkey set of pickups. So they're specially designed and built to be copies of those John Birch pickups, or as close as they can be, really. These are basically rewound P90s that have been placed in steel cases. So you can see they are very different looking to your typical P90 pickups. And they are slightly smaller as well, so they're actually a different size than pretty much any pickups. You might confuse these for P90s or for mini humbuckers. They're kind of in between the two. But if you take a look, you can see got our P90s here, and we've got our JayDee recreations of those John Birch pickups, and they are slightly smaller, which is really fascinating and really cool. And these pickups are really hard to get and really expensive, so that's where the bulk of the cost of this thing is going to go into those pickups. But they're hopefully going to give us a much closer approximation of that monkey sound, and of course with these massive pickup rings and just this classic style and look of these things, they're definitely going to change the vibe of this guitar and bring it a lot closer to Tony Iommi's guitar. Other differences that his guitar has is that over the years he's changed out the bridge a couple of times to different designs. This one just got the stock lightning bolt bridge, which is very primitive and not very adjustable. However, it does actually hold its tuning really well, and it intonates pretty well, even though this is a very, very basic bridge. But we're going to be swapping it with this guy here. This is just a very cheap aftermarket bridge. It's done in the same style as like a Leo Kwan wraparound bridge, which is basically what was used on Tony's guitar at various points, especially till the end of its life, and what it's kind of got on it at the present time. Now, his guitar is actually hanging in the Hard Rock Cafe in New York, I believe. So it has been out of service for a while, but I think the final bridge it had was one of these, or something similar. Of course, this is just a cheapo bridge. I didn't actually get the Leo Kwan model or anything like that, just because this is a decent bridge for all intents and purposes. There's nothing really wrong with this. It's pretty much an identical copy, or close enough abouts. Especially since we are using an Epiphone, I don't really mind having some minor differences like that. So that's another difference that his guitar has. It also has some like holes in it and stuff like that, where he did actually have a Tune-o-matic style bridge with the stop tailpiece installed at one point, and other things like that, but we're just going to go for the more sort of iconic look with this bridge here. This guitar also wasn't done in a sparkling burgundy finish like this guitar here. He had that clear cherry gloss finish where you can actually see the wood grain and all that sort of stuff. It also had very unique and iconic contours to the body of the guitar. It had quite deep cuts along the sides, and it looked really freaking awesome. This thing has a more restrained look to it, a more typical SG kind of a shape, which is a bit of a shame, but it's still got fairly nice contours, looks really decent, and is still done in red, so it's a good contender. He also had his guitar knobs changed to witch hat knobs. I wasn't even intending to do that, but I just happened to have a couple of these things lying around, so we might even do that as well. And there we go, I lost one. Another difference, which I don't know if I should do or not, in all honesty, but probably won't. I don't really know if I could do it very well. But another thing that he had done to his guitar is the fretboard. He had it sprayed or covered in I think it's a polyurethane lacquer. So he actually had a lacquered fretboard, whereas these guitars, they typically, especially if the rosewood, I don't think this is rosewood on this particular one, it's some sort of similar wood, but it does the job. These fretboards are typically left bare, so that's an interesting difference that he used. And finally, the one thing that I did really want to do, but I can't for the life of me find the parts for it, because I did have them, but I looked everywhere, and I couldn't find them. But what he did was he had a 0 fret installed as well. So the way you do that, and I actually have a video on this process because I've done it to another guitar before, is you grind away at the front of the nut here, remove some material, and you slot a bit of fret wire up in there in the 0 position. And what that does is it helps with intonation. It helps keep the open strings when you play them much brighter and more even sounding with the rest of the guitar frets. Because remember, when you're playing a fretted note, it's typically going to sound a bit brighter than a note with where you're keeping it open, because the fret wire, you're actually pushing the string onto a piece of metal, that being the fret wire. However, open strings are typically resting on a piece of bone or plastic or something like that, something which is going to generally have a slightly more muffled sound. It's not a big deal, and it's almost unnoticeable, but I have found with the guitar that I have put the 0 fret in that it does help with intonation, and the action on the guitar is much lower, much more comfortable to play with. It is just really good, a really good mod, and I really wanted to do it on this guitar, and it's something which I'm still gonna do, but I might have to do it in a future video, or just in the future. I don't know if I'll do a video about it, because again, I already have done a video on adding a 0 frets to a guitar, but I wanted to do that, but I guess I can't today, which is a bummer. Tony actually had the guitar strap moved from the back of the guitar here, the top one here, up to the tip of the horn to give it more balance. I don't know if I'm going to do that on this model. I probably will attempt it, but I probably won't do it today. But that's just another thing to bear in mind. Those are the main differences that his guitar has to a regular SG. So what we are going to have to do is replace the pickups. Those are going to be replaced. We're going to have to cut a bit of the pick guard away, because remember, these pickups have these big massive plastic surrounds, and they're going to have to put into the fretboard, not the fretboard, the pick guard a little bit there. So that's going to be the main thing. I also know that the electronics in Tony's guitar were messed around with at some point. I know he disconnected the tone. I'm not going to mess with the electronics as of yet. I'm just going to swap the pickups in as they are. And then as I research more and I figure out what electronics would be appropriate for this build, then I'll swap those out. But as it is, these ones will work just fine, I assume. And we're going to change out that bridge, the pickups, adjust the pick guard, and that's all we're going to do in this video. But still, it's going to get this guitar pretty damn close. And, dare I say, it'll get this guitar closer than the attempt Gibson put out. The original guy who made the pickups for Tony Iommi, again, his name was John Birch. His company, John Birch Guitars, are still going. However, John Birch himself passed away a little while ago, or I actually don't know what year he did die in, but he's no longer alive, so the company is no longer being run by him. The pickups aren't made by him, obviously, all that stuff. And they're very different to the type of pickups that John Birch would have been producing. So again, one thing that's really, really iconic and typical of John Birch's actual pickups is that they tended to be made in this style. They were in approximately this size. Now, I'm not sure if these JayDee pickups are exactly the same size as the John Birch pickups. So I actually did, somebody sent me these pickup rings here, which they said were actually made for John Birch pickups. And they're actually even slightly smaller in scale than these JayDee pickups. I'm not sure. Maybe these are actually for mini humbuckers or something like that. I'm not 100% sure because I don't own any original John Birch pickups. But they should have been made in approximately this same scale, in this same style, where they were all pretty much covered in these steel casings, and the pickups tended to be potted in resin. There you guys go. You get a nice good look at the back of this pickup, this nice steel casing. There's the front of it there with the 9 pole pieces. Normally his pickups would also have like a little engraving saying John Birch Hyperflux or Simplux or Magnum or whatever model it happened to be. That's your typical sort of John Birch style pickup, like the actual John Birch ones. These days, the company is still going. It's run by a dude named John Carlin. They still make great pickups. I have a couple of them. Here we've got actually P90 sized pickups, which are actually made to approximate the style of pickups that the Monkey guitar would have had. I was actually intending to use these originally in this guitar, but I just never got round to it, and then I decided to actually order the more accurate JayDee ones. So I don't know what I'm going to do with those. I'm probably going to put them in another guitar, or I was thinking about installing them in here first and trying to do a sound demo to compare with these ones, but I don't think I have the time or the energy to bother with doing that, nor do I think I can get a reasonable sound demo out of these anyway, but that's neither here nor there. So they are still going and they're still making pickups, and they do make a Monkey set of pickups, which is what they used in the Gibson guitars, which on the one hand sounds like a good move because Gibson now have some modern era John Birch pickups in there, which is, you know, fairly accurate to what Tony Iommi used. He used John Birch pickups. However, the Monkey set of pickups that modern day John Birch company make are nowhere near like the actual ones that Tony Iommi was using in his Monkey guitar, which is bizarre to me. I don't know why they did that. For some reason, they engineered these pickups to be mini humbuckers with the appearance of like a P90. So basically they crammed humbuckers into a P90 shape. I think they actually, instead of having the coils facing up, they actually faced them inwards, and then had all these pole pieces running down the middle to kind of, I don't know, it's this weird construction from what I understand. But the reason they did that was they were, the guy who's running it now was under the assumption that P90 style pickups like this were way too low output to be used in the monkey guitar, and thus they engineered this kind of weird humbucker P90 hybrid to go into these guitars. And they were also, like I said, this exact size. They were made of these exact sized casings. You can just see it in all the photos of the Gibson recreations, those super expensive ones. They have these big P90 size pickups in there when they're meant to be smaller. They're meant to be this scale, and they're meant to be actual P90 style pickups. It's pretty common knowledge, if you do some light research on this topic, that especially the bridge pickup was basically just a Gibson P90, but rewound into a slightly smaller sized coil and just crammed inside this steel casing and resin potted. You can very much see the difference between the sizing of these two, and if I actually bring in the modern John Birch kind of version, again, this isn't that like weird humbucker hybrid. This is basically just a standard P90 as well, a sort of slightly more lower output one, but designed to look vaguely like the monkey pickups. So you can see big size difference between these things too. So this one here is called the John Birch Simplux 2 pickup. There we go. And this is the JayDee equivalent of the monkey pickup. Even though I'm using an Epiphone guitar, I kind of feel a little bit of superiority here over Gibson because my guitar is actually going to have more accurate pickups in it. So yeah, take that one, Gibson. Nah, I have nothing against Gibson, but it's still just bizarre to me that they didn't go with the JayDee pickups. Nonetheless, I'm really happy I got these things because they were difficult to get. If you're going to do a project like this, then bear in mind these pickups aren't cheap, and they take forever to actually be made. So you get these by actually emailing JayDee Custom Guitars. You email them, you say what you want, you pay them when they're done and all that stuff. But you put on a wait list, basically, and they have to make them. And these things took many months. I ordered them somewhere in late 2020, and it is April 2021 when these things arrived. So yeah, they do take a while to make, and I had two sets made. I had these monkey pickups, and if you saw my other video, you'd have saw I got these old boy pickups, JayDee old boy pickups, and I have a whole other project which I'm not going to talk about in this video because I've already talked about it enough in my other video on it, but that's going to be real exciting, where I'm going to be converting this broken Epiphone Tony Iommi signature guitar. I'm going to be converting it into a copy of his old boy guitar, which is made by JayDee. So that's going to be fun as well, especially since the headstock's been torn off and I have to repair it. Now, I don't know how in-depth I'm going to go into my process doing this thing. I'll probably not really film too much. I might do it as a montage of photos and just filming some of it with my phone and stuff like that. Don't worry, my phone's got a decent camera, probably better than this one, to be fair. So that'll all work out good, and I might do a voiceover over it or something like that. But basically, it's going to be a pretty simple process. It'll just be a matter of taking these pickups out, taking the bridge off, putting the new one on, making sure the intonation's good, and I'll also be swapping the tuners. Again, it's not because I want to swap them to make them more accurate, because I know Tony, his guitar, actually had very similar tuners on it initially, these Clouson style tuners with the sort of plastic tips, but apparently he changed them to like nickel-plated Schaller tuners. I'm not going to change mine to those because I don't actually have a spare set of those on me. I'm going to be changing these to some locking tuners. These are just Korean-made locking tuners by a brand called Jinho, spelled Jin-Ho. They're basically Wilkinsons, but they're unbranded, so they're a little bit cheaper. I just got these off AliExpress. I've used these on my other guitars. They're fantastic. Got a good high gear ratio is why I like to use them as well, so you can really fine tune your tuning. and then nice and stable. Sorry, I've been talking for way too long, guys. Like I said at the beginning, I warned you guys. There's going to be a lot of talk in this video, because I really wanted to convey all this stuff nice and clearly for you guys, and you can follow the process along. What I wanted to do now is I wanted to take you guys through these pickups. I'm going to weigh them and measure them and check the DC resistance on them, just to give you guys a little bit of an overview of these specific pickups. Starting with the bridge pickup. So again, this would probably be just a rewound Gibson P90. On the front, looks like a P90, basically. It's just smaller, and again has this very big black thick plastic surround, custom made for it. Looking really nice. From the back you have this sort of typical JayDee pickups design, or it's completely covered in this steel shell. Now the reason these things were encased in these steel shells and modified by having them potted in resin as opposed to wax was because these pickups originally, especially the raw brand new P90s that these were made from, they had so much feedback. Just imagine, like, you know, back in the day we have those Laney supergroup amps turned way up fully because those amps didn't have master volume knobs, so you had to crank those things to get distortion out of them and just volume on stage. That combined with the Rangemaster treble booster that Tony was using, which are known to be a bit noisy as well, combined with single coil pickups, you're gonna get a lot of feedback, a lot of noise. So these were designed by John Birch to be as quiet as you could make them. That was kind of the motivation between doing these mods to them. So there you guys go. I can bring in a P90 casing right next to it, just so you guys can see the size difference. Like this thing, I think you can literally just cover, yeah, the pickup with this P90 casing. So there is a size difference between a typical P90. However, the like screw holes and arrangement of this is all pretty much identical to a P90. However, unlike a P90, you see these little middle screws, which are normally used to lower and raise the pickup. They don't come out the back, so they're not like a typical P90 where these little screws here are used to lower and raise the pickup. You actually have mounts on the sides here like that. It is really heavy feeling, actually. But all of these JayDee pickups that I've gotten feel really heavy, and that's probably because they're fairly big, and again they're filled with resin. Not to mention they're literally just metal, the rest of them, because they're wire coil, which actually can get quite heavy with pickups. So that's a nice look at that. We can also bring in a typical humbucker. So here is like a typical PAF style humbucker. I think these are Vanson pickups. I was meant to install these in one of my Les Paul copies, but never got round to it. So I just have this loose humbucker. You can see what they look like. You can see comparison from the sides that these JayDee pickups quite thick compared to these pickups here, and from this side you can see that the JayDee pickups are much smaller size than the humbucker, but in terms of width they're not that different, but they are smaller than a P90 as well. So I actually have a little scale here, and let's see if I can turn this on. So we got our little scale ready to go. So again, we'll start off with the bridge pickup. So hopefully the magnets won't have an effect or anything, but with the pickup and the surround, it comes to 196 grams, which is quite heavy. Just to give you an idea, I'm going to weigh this Vanson, I think it's Vanson, just this typical PAF style humbucker. So that comes to 124 grams. So yeah, nice hefty little humbucker. However, this single coil JayDee John Birch style monkey guitar pickup, yeah, 197, 198 grams thereabouts. So that gives you guys a nice idea of how heavy these things are. I will also add that I don't know how to measure this, but I can tell that these are very strong magnets that are used in these things as well, because look at that, I'm just using a ruler and it's holding up that whole pickup, and I can tell you guys can't feel it, but I can vouch for this pickup that they feel very strong, the magnets used in them. Like if I again get this this PAF style pickup, there's nothing there. This pickup is 2/3 the weight of that one, if not less, and the magnets they're like not barely there. So we're gonna assume that these are gonna be quite powerful pickups. So the same thing will probably apply with this guy here. Look at that. It has no problem being held up this way. Ah, that's strong. So see how much this one weighs. Second one, 197 grams, so basically identical to that first one there. 197 grams. So this one has the 9 pole pieces here. It's that classic neck pickup of the Monkey SG, looking real snazzy. The back looks identical to the first pickup. It's just got these 3 little tabs here. I'm guessing there's one for each coil and one for ground. That's probably what I'd guess is why there's 3 tabs there. And we got this lovely braided wire on both of the pickups. And just a clean backing with the 2 holes here, which I assume is where they pour the resin in to pot it. Again, these pickup surrounds are made of just a solid black plastic, and they just got these contours around the sides, but have like a sharp top, 4 screw holes to hold the pickup to the guitar body, and 2 screw holes to mount the pickup into the mounts themselves. There we go. Again, same exact dimensions as all the other JayDee pickups. They're quite thick. I actually wonder how thick the coil itself is, or whether there's just empty space behind the pickup that they just fill with resin. We really can't tell, and there's really no way to tell without destroying the whole damn pickup, which I'm assuming would be very difficult, because these things are built like little tanks, which is really cool. What I wanted to do is I wanted to measure these things for you, so you guys can get an approximation of how big these things are. This way, it measures 76.4 millimeters wide, and this way they measure, I'm just going to do it from the back because there's a little more space, and this way they measure 33.5 millimeters. So that gives you an approximation of the dimensions of this pickup. Let's actually check how thick these pickups are. So all of these pickups seem to be the same dimensions. So this should cover all your JayDee pickups, but these measure 21.6 millimeters is how thick these things are. So that's over 2.5 centimeters. So they are quite thick. So that's, yeah, about an inch thick, I think. So I did measure both of these pickup mounts already for somebody, and I did notice they were both off by a couple of millimeters here and there. So they were definitely like handmade or made a little bit more roughly. That's not machined perfectly to be identical to each other, which, you know, it's something to bear in mind, but it's no big deal. These things look great, and they fit the pickups perfectly, and they'll look great on the guitar. But let's take a look at one of them, and we'll get the approximate measurements. So if you're trying to recreate these yourself, you'll have some idea of how big you want these things to be. So the width, I'm getting 57.9 mil, or 58 mil, something around that size in terms of the width here, or the height. And the width on this side, if you look at that, get about 100.1 millimeters, or 99.7 millimeters, so about 10 centimeters. Yeah, 59 millimeters by about 100 millimeters. Now let's actually look at the DC resistance of these guys. So the neck pickup, I'm getting about 7.87K. 7.87K for the neck pickup. So that's not that much, but remember the magnets in these things are freaking high. And then for the bridge pickup, getting 8.6K or thereabouts. It's kind of jumping a little bit. 8.5 something to 8.6, somewhere around that level. It's a little hard to tell because I don't have the best setup for this, but yeah. There we go. Let's cut to that montage. I wanted to show you guys a really cool method of actually attaching tuners onto a guitar like this, especially if you don't have an existing screw hole that fits, like these tuners here. The way I'm doing it to actually get them in the right position, because if you just put the tuner on, it's kind of hard to tell where you want to put it, because you can spin it around all this way, and the edge here of the headstock is curved, so you can't really use a straight edge ruler or anything to kind of tell what's a right angle to this curve here. However, you still do want it to line up perfectly with all your other tuners and the holes around the headstock. So the easiest way I found to use is to actually get a ruler and plop in two tuners at once on either side. You actually get the ruler, and because these tuners actually happen to have flat tops, so they actually have perfectly flat tops, we can actually place the ruler on top here, and that actually will align our tuners in the correct spot. So I also do recommend, while doing this, you actually screw down the back. I would do this while I'm not filming, but I would screw this one on from the front. This one's already has it on, so it's kind of more firm. That way it's not going to move around too much. And then when they're pressed nicely to the edge of the guitar, you'll actually press that ruler down towards them and just angle them so that there's no gap between the ruler on either side. So something like that. There you go. So I hope that makes sense, and then when you have these two things centered straight, you'll be able to drill a little hole through there or mark it. I'm actually just tightening them from the other side, making sure they don't move from this position, and I'm using this little pin vise, which is a very small hand drill of sorts, and just actually drilling the hole. So basically you'd plop it in, and then you move this little washer thing down, and that actually, while pressing the tip here, and that actually spins this little drill bit in there, makes a little hole. This guitar's made of fairly soft wood, so it doesn't have to be a full drilled hole, and then I'll put a screw in there, and then, yeah, tighten it again from the front to be fully tightened, and then they're all installed. So I just took out one of these P90s. So these are the Epiphone Pro P90 pickups, or whatever they're called, and they never really said anything about them, like what magnets they use or output or anything. The cover for these is coming off quite easily, so I'm curious if I take it off. I think I am detecting an Alnico magnet just looking at that color of that metal there, although I'm not sure if that is the magnet or not, but I think it is. So I got rid of those screws. You can finally remove this, and this is what our P90 pickups look like underneath. So these springs, of course, is what held the pickup up. They're just kind of attached to the magnets down here. And look at that. We've got the nice wide coil here. It's quite thin actually from the side here. It was thinner than I was expecting this to be, but I guess that's probably normal for a P90. There is the all the numbers and stuff under there. You can see it's got this metal plate there, and yeah, that does look like an Alnico magnet. Yeah, ceramic magnets are usually black color, and they're the ones that are typically associated with cheaper pickups, but generally higher end pickups tend to use Alnico magnets. So that's a really good sign from this Epiphone here, that they did actually use Alnico P90 pickups, and I can vouch for these. These sound incredible, so that's really cool. They actually use nice decent pickups in this thing. I'm gonna have to detach these from the electronics, and then we can start to add our John Birch, well, not John Birch, John JayDee, but originally these would have been John Birch pickups, but we can start to add these, and you can see just how thick these are compared to especially just the coil of these. It's kind of stuck now. It's tricky doing this one hand, but look at that. So there we got the coil and the magnet, and then here got this massive thick thing. However, it is smaller from the top, so that's interesting. So yeah, I will continue working on this and seeing just how I can install this. I'm kind of not exactly sure how best to do this, because what I'm gonna do is I need to put these pickups in these cavities, make sure they fit. If they don't, I'll have to route it out, but that's not even what I'm worried about. I just want to make sure they're nicely centered and that I have a way of actually figuring out how much of this pick guard I need to cut, because I will have to cut away a section here and some of at the top here as well, just so the pickup mount ring can actually fit here. And as you can see, we got the new bridge here. Luckily this one fit perfectly, because I have had some issues with different bridges having issues actually fitting on these little mounts when I was looking for different mounts for my Scheller 456 bridge. Here we go. So this one's the one that I'm putting on my other Tony Iommi inspired guitar, the one that's going to be modifying a Epiphone Tony Iommi Signature SG and turning it into a JayDee old boy style guitar. So I've had issues with these not working with some of the mounts. Luckily somebody sent me these, which fit it perfectly, but I don't have the actual piece that will sit inside the guitar body that will match this exact thread of screw. So that's what I'm searching for at the moment. So that project is on hold until I get that done at the moment, but yeah, that's just a whole other thing. Yeah, this has been attached. The tuners went on really well. I'm really happy with these because these are great tuners. And I found a good method, which I told you guys a second ago about, on how to actually get them all lined up straight so they're nice and even. They don't look wonky, so that's all great. I am just test fitting these now because I've taken out that weird spongy stuff that the P90s had under them. And it seems that we're in luck. These pickups happen to be just about the right size, including these screws that come out the side of them here, these mounting screws, that when you plop them in, let me just pull the cable away, because these are, again, quite thick, so the less stuff they have under them, the better they will fit. Again, this is difficult to do with one hand. Once you plop them in, they seem to sit in here with very little, if any, sideways wobble in this P90 route, which is excellent, because that means that basically you can only move them up and down a little bit, and if we're going to assume that these P90 routes are pretty much square with how we want them to be, then I can just kind of push the pickup up and then trace around it on the pick guard, and that's how I'll know where to cut it. So if I do that for both of these pickup mounts, then take off the pick guard, and then I can actually mount these in, that'll be excellent. So that's probably what I'm going to do here. I'm just worried about the depth of these. I've seen some other, like John Birch pickups, they have these little things that stick out of them with the wire kind of bent down a little bit, but I think we might be okay, that these might fit without those bending down, but in the event that I do need to, and that's what I will do. On this side, luckily, we have actually kind of like a hole in the body here, which is something I might do in this side, because the hole for the wire isn't actually in the same area as the little tabs for the wire out of the pickup. So I might kind of route a little area in here, just dig out some of that wood to help these fit if they need that. Another thing which I'm going to do is, in order to attach these to the guitar, the wiring in here, because again, I'm going to leave it stock wiring right now. I know the Real Monkey guitar had some modified electronics. I know that the tone for the bridge pickup at some point was disconnected and all that stuff, just to give a bit more brightness to the sound, but what I'm probably going to do at the moment is I will just attach it exactly how it was. And the way I'm going to do that is, if I bring in one of the old P90s, if I bring in this one, we have these little plastic doohickeys. And if you saw the photos from earlier, these are made just to plug in to the wiring inside of it. And that makes it super easy to actually install these. So rather than messing around soldering these things on the inside of this cavity or soldering them directly to some of the electronics in there, what I can do is I can actually just snip off these little connectors from these pickups and solder them directly onto the ends of their wires here, and then I can just plop them in and plug them in, and that's going to make this a very easy process to actually add these to the wiring. So that's really good as well. Thank you, Epiphone, for adding these little doohickeys. They make my life slightly easier. I've also labeled the connectors in here, neck and bridge. So the other ends of these, they weren't labeled initially. That's just something I did myself, but it's actually kind of easy to tell. You just look to which potentiometer they link to, whether it's the bridge volume or the neck volume. So now that I've got a nice test fit of these two pickups, what I need to do is mark out on the pick guard just where I need to cut the pick guard so that the pickups can actually fit. Now what I'm thinking of doing is I'm gonna mark it out first, and then I'll take off the pick guard, then I can install the pickups and all of that good stuff, and even get this thing running, and then I can cut the pick guard to size and install it later on, because it's basically just cosmetic. It doesn't really do anything functional, and it's something that can be installed once the strings are actually attached, so there's no rush with that. But what I do need to do is know exactly where to cut it. So the fact is, these pickups, they barely wobble once they do actually sit in these holes, which is great, like I said earlier, which means that we know exactly on the side here where we need to mark it out. Now, I could do one of two things. What I could do is I could put tape across the whole pick guard, or at least all the bits near the pickups, and then use a marker or something, or pen, just to draw on top of the tape where it needs to be cut, and that could be the way to do it. Or I could even use the tape as the line, so I could just put the tape around where the pickups are, and just remember that that is the actual line that it needs to be cut on. I opted to do the method where I surround the pickups with tape, and so thus we can pull them out like so, and now we know what plastic we need to remove from the pick guard once we get round to it. So pull the pickups out, and then we can take off the pick guard, and then we can slot the pickups back in, and then we know exactly where to put these screw holes to get the pickups to sit in there. I did actually test fit the pickups in here, and when I put this one in, it does turn out that the pickup is pushed up by this little area of solder joints here. So these tabs kind of push the pickup up when we push it in, because there's a bit too much wood right around here. And as it happens, I am the proud owner of some woodworking chisels, so I might just actually chisel out a bit of material there just to make sure this pickup sits in there nice and flush and there's room to raise and lower it. We don't need much. As you can see, the channel here, this is probably a lot deeper than we even need, and this is perfect for the other pickup here. It's the little warp channel that funnels the wire through to the tone and volume controls. So yeah, I'm just going to do that now, and then I'm going to solder those little tabs, or whatever you'd call them, onto the ends of the pickup wires so that we can attach them to our electronics. So I just finished actually carving out a bit of material for the bottom of these pickups. Again, I need to carve out a little bit for this section, and I actually also found out that I did need to slightly trim away at the edges on either side of these pickup cavities here. Nothing major, maybe like a millimeter on either side, thereabouts. I just used a very sharp knife, this tool here, from my woodworking set, and I just basically sliced off sections across here very carefully, trying to make it as even as I possibly could. The reason I needed to do that was I noticed that the pickups, when they were sitting in the cavities, they were quite high as they were delivered stock. And I wanted to make sure, especially since these pickups seem to be quite high output and have quite strong magnets in them, I wanted to make sure I could lower them safely without them getting jammed in these holes. And it turns out when you do lower them, as you can see there's that spring there and the pickups come out, that the actual shape of them with these little tabs on the side is just barely big enough to fit in these holes. So that's something I had to modify. But now they fit and we can lower them to a good amount. So I'm pretty satisfied with that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to solder those little bits onto the ends of here. So I'm just going to get my P90 pickups that were originally in these cavities, and we're going to cut these little doohickeys off, and then these are going to be what we solder to the ends of our new pickups. And that way we can just click them in and it'll all be good. Both pickups now have these little doohickeys soldered onto them, so we can pretty simply just place the pickups in here, run the wires through the back, and then clip those in, which is what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to do this one pickup at a time, just so we don't mix up the wires. And start with this pickup here, which is pretty much the only way you can really do it effectively anyway. So the neck pickup, gonna slot through here, run the wire through the little hole. I should probably do this while not filming, because then I can do it both hands. So we got our neck pickup in. It's just loosely in on the other side, and now we can actually plug it in. With the convenience of these little connectors, or whatever they're called, it's going to be as simple as... Actually, am I going to be able to do this with one hand? We'll see. But basically, the idea is that this should just pop in. Yeah, there we go. Success. So easy I can do it with one hand. Excellent. So I've done the same thing with the bridge pickup now. It is wired in there. I'm not going to show you because I'd have to flip over the guitar and these things are going to fall out because they're not screwed down yet. I haven't even drilled the little holes for the screws yet, but that's what I'm going to do shortly. First, what I'm going to do is I got this lovely jack lead which heads all the way down to my little Laney amp combo, which is on, as you can hear. I'm going to plug that in because in theory these pickups should actually be connected to these electronics. So, in theory, got the bridge pickup set, we should hear something. You hear that horrible sound? That is the first sound that I'm ever hearing through these beautiful pickups. Awesome! Okay, so the bridge pickup works. Let's try the neck pickup. Switch the switch. Okay. Yes! It's working. Oh, great. Great. And the bridge pickup is off. Good. Now we try both. Okay. So switch is in the middle. It's working. It's working. Yes. Okay. So the electronics work. So what I'm gonna do is just get my little, whatever you call it, this little screwdriver thing, I think it's called a pin vise, and just start drilling in the holes and we can screw down the pickups. There we go. Both our pickups are now attached to the guitar. Very nice. Look at that. Isn't that just brilliant? Haha. Okay, so we're really getting close to wrapping this part of the project up. So I'm just gonna flip her over real carefully. We see we got these wires here. I'm gonna have to delicately kind of fold these around in some way just to make sure these ground wires don't short circuit anything. And after that, I'm gonna put the lid back on, and that's all gonna be ready. And basically, we can start stringing this thing up and setting up the intonation and all that good stuff, which I don't think I really need to do on camera because it's a very basic guitar kind of thing. It's just putting on strings and setting it up. So yeah, this came together finally. Again, I still really want to do the 0 fret and all of that other stuff. I might actually change out the knobs on this thing real quick as well to those witch hat knobs, see how they look. But yeah, It's so close to being done now. So here it is, all tuned up, all installed, all just looking and sounding wonderful. This thing took me all night to actually mod. I had an all-nighter when I was working on it, but it was so worth it because this thing is so awesome. You can see it's got all the strings on it. These are just the old strings that the previous pickups used. I did just record a little demo of this thing playing. The way I had my setup run is I'm using this LC V32 combo, if that's correct. It's got the little name of the amp there. This lovely Laney 30-watt valve combo. This thing is great. And I'm running it with this pedal, which is my custom germanium treble booster. So this is a pedal kit made by a dude who goes by the name of DIY Guitar Pedals on YouTube, and he's got his own website. He's an Aussie dude, and he makes kits of various pedals, and they're very affordable. And this one in particular sounds freaking amazing. I actually have the signature Black Country Customs Laney, whatever you want to call it, Tony Iommi treble booster, and I actually prefer this little one here. Even though it's, as you can see, I needed to wedge the can up a bit because something was short-circuiting. It's not made very well because I made it, but it sounds amazing when it works. The last thing I actually need to do is the pick guard. I haven't done that yet, but it's all functional as of now anyway without the pick guard, so that's so cool. With the pick guard, one thing I did want to bring up is Tony Iommi's guitar actually has this kind of curved little piece here, and I think I'll have to custom make that using this portion of the pickguard right here, because what I was originally going to do is just cut this top off and just insert it there. However, you see these pickguards are usually made with one side being curved for the horn and this side being completely straight, but you need this to actually curve. And if I do that this way, then we're going to get, we're going to get some of these holes for the screw holes, making it look ugly, which isn't on Tony's guitar. And it's going to be too small if I actually try and use that curve. It's kind of hard to see. I might just be able to make it work, but I think the easiest part is, because we're going to be cutting away this bit anyway, is if we just ignore this tape here and we just kind of custom make it from this whole piece and try and use the bottom section here. That way we might get away with not having these little screw holes get in the way, and we can use the same piece of plastic. That's what I'm gonna attempt anyway, or my kind of theory. Hopefully it works out. But yeah, this is gonna be the next part of the project. Another thing that in future I will probably end up doing on this guitar is I need to grind down some of the saddles on this bridge, because I've actually lowered the action as low as it can go. So these are screwed down tight, and it is still a little bit too high on some of the bass strings, and Tony is known for having really low action on his guitars. Again, to help with the fact that he's got, like, you know, the injured fingers. That's why he had this guitar modded in the first place, to kind of loosen the strings and stuff like that. So that's what I'm gonna have to do, I think, because these are just a little bit too high. It's not too bad. I also think when I do install the 0 fret, which I'm so irritated that I couldn't find my fret wire, because I looked everywhere for it. I tore my studio apart from top to bottom looking for it, because I had a whole set of fret wire and I've only used one of them on a previous project. So that's gonna be something that I'm gonna do in the future. I may or may not change this truss rod cover to a Hell Guitar Parts truss rod cover, because they have some really fancy cast brass truss rod covers and they look really nice. There's actually one with like a cross on it, which would fit the Black Sabbath vibe. But yeah, that's pretty much it with this guitar as of now. I'm gonna play you that sound demo, and yeah, you'll get to finally hear it for yourselves. In a future video, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have a sound demo of this thing running through the same germanium treble booster. However, I'm gonna run it through my Laney BL30, the little 30-watt supergroup amp that I own, and that's gonna be a really close approximation to Tony's actual rig that he used in the 70s. It's exciting. I can't wait to test it out to see how it sounds, but even just through this little amp, sounds amazing. I love these things. The treble booster really, really brings these pickups to life. The comparison I did with the regular P90s without the treble booster, I would say that the P90s actually did really well. They're really good pickups. They had a lot of oomph to them and a lot of kind of bass, and they broke up really nicely. These are have a more slightly open, precise sound. I don't know how to explain it, but once you actually run the treble booster with these, they just have that lovely attack and that brightness and that thickness as well. They're just great, 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 great. Anyhow, let's listen to that sound demo and you can judge for yourselves. It's not my best playing at all by far, but I hope you guys can still enjoy it and just take this sound demo for the tone of the guitar more so than my playing. But
Thank you.